this one here. We need a roll call. We tell Zoe. They have a motion to approve the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Is there any objection? Consent the agenda approved. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to address the committee? Seeing. Okay, that sounds like there's not hearing anyone. Please unmute and speak up if you're online and you want to speak now. How about the minutes?
Move to approve the minutes, sir.
I'll second.
Okay, then that moves us on to new business. So for anyone who remembers our December 21st meeting, we had laid out sort of a plan for what we want to accomplish this year. In the first meeting, which we've had only one meeting so far this year, was to review the risk assessment. For the second meeting, which is this one, we're going to have a policy review. Get to that on there somewhere. If we went back to the December 21st meeting, we had educational topics for the committee. And the first one, or the number one topic that we wanted to talk about was data security. So that's just my little way of introducing what we have for new business before us for this meeting. And so I think the first thing is cybersecurity. Gil, do you want to introduce Chris's topic here, or Chris, do you want to just start?
I'm going to let Chris introduce himself, his background, and his topic.
Sure.
Oh, sure. Sure.
New mouse pad.
You can actually pull up the chart. Just have to use this PDF.
PDF.
That's not right.
Right, James.
So, oh, I see.
Make it bigger than
Oh, there. I got it. There, you can see that, okay?
better.
Okay, good. I put in this caveat slide just at the beginning because I know this is going to be something that lasts in the public record, that there's some assumptions that I made in putting this information together. And this isn't to expect that this committee knows any of this stuff. It's just that it's important to understand when we talk about cybersecurity, we often refer to standards in the industry, standards that are brought on to us by OCR, by CMS, by the National Institute of Standards and Telecommunications, or Technology, excuse me, NIST, as we know it. And the NIST 800 series, which is largely composed of this is how you should be thinking about securing information systems in organizations. A lot of this historically has been always slanted towards the federal government. But in today's interconnectedness, I'll put it that way, there was an effort that was done by NIST to produce something called the Cybersecurity Framework, and we'll get to that in a second. We're now on the 2.0 version of that Cybersecurity Framework that was released in January of this year. So you'll see that a lot of what we do here in the IS department and the standards that we try to align with when it comes to cybersecurity are principally around these four NIST standards: 853, which is security controls, 834, which is contingency planning, so that would be business continuity, 837, which is the risk management framework, and then 861 for incident response. So all of these, if you can think of it, these are kind of foundational documents that we use to align what we do. Any questions on that? Okay. Since I don't know you, I thought maybe it would be nice if you had a little bit of background for where I've been and what I've done. I've largely been in cybersecurity space, I guess you could say, since about 2007. And I'm a retread CISO for the state of Alaska, which is kind of strange. Usually when CISOs leave places, they don't go back.
Chris,
and
what's a CISO?
A CISO is a Chief Information Security Officer. So in both of those, that's in my first 2013 to 17, I was with Enterprise Technology Services, serving as the CISO for the state of Alaska. So that's the executive branch, 16 agencies, and trying to make sure we're all swimming in the right direction. And then I took a break from that in 2017 and did consulting for 5 years with a company called Wasserman Associates. And then I got called back. The state was having there were 3 national news articles that kind of drew me in that we were under attack. The state was experiencing some cybersecurity incidents, and I started having lunch with the CIO, and he asked me to come back, and so that's what I did. And I went back and helped sort of right the ship. It was amazing how much didn't really adhere over the 5 years that I was gone. And then in 2023, this opportunity came up to sort of go back to what I call the full buffet of information system management. And so I accepted this role in April last year. Throughout this career, I've been able to do some really fun things, working with the National Guard Bureau as a private mission partner, and then being selected for the AEP, which was very eye-opening under DHS Security Information Assurance and the DNI, which is the Office of Director of National Intelligence. I'm originally from Kentucky. I was transplanted here via the United States Navy, which is why I have that back. I was stationed out in the oceans on a little island called Adak. I was a naval security group back then. Okay, at the beginning of all of our meetings, this is something that we're trying to inculturate here at Bartlett, is put in front of everyone the strategy and how it maps to our mission, vision, and values. And then the next slide, we'd like to pause for a moment at the beginning of our meetings just to see if anyone might have a care story that they want to share related to our care values: courtesy, accountability, respect, and excellence. And these are little short stories that exemplify one of these traits in either our staff or what we've noticed in and around the hospital. Anyone have anything they want to share?
So Rhonda, who works with Gail in Gail's department, we've been super busy all throughout the organization. And they needed some help in other different units. And so I was trying to, put out some fires. And when I asked her, I'm like, hey, can you just go to MHU and just see if they can need help passing meds, mental health unit? She's like, sure. She's like, you know what? I'll just go around at all the units and see if they need breaks, if I do. And so I just thought that was really nice because it's not really her job anymore, nor was it before. She came from same day, but without even a hesitation, she just said, oh, absolutely. And before I knew it, she went through, came back, gave me a report of everything that was kind of going on, what she had done. And anyway, and I just thought that was really great because it's hard to find that, I think, nowadays, people willing to just go back right into the nursing realm. So I thought that showed courtesy, accountability, respect, and excellence.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. All right. So what I wanted to do today was I have this presentation broken up in a couple of key areas. This first one is representative of our challenges, which is really our threats. And like I put in that caveat slide, all the information that I'm sharing is from open source and from reports from OCR or CMS directly. The first and foremost one that is keeping us awake at night is ransomware. Ransomware, when it originally started, was really just sort of it was a money grab by financially motivated cyber threat actors. So they would land in your environment and they would kick off some kind of a malicious program that would then encrypt files on your machines and basically lock you out of your data. And then they would contact you, or some of the sophisticated ransoms actually have screens that pop up with not only instructions, but also with 1-800 line or 24/7 tech support, so that you can pay the ransom to them. They will instruct you on how to go and find the nearest Bitcoin capable ATM if you don't have any Bitcoins to pay. They're very helpful that way. And so that was kind of devastating in and of itself. And one of the big projects that I worked on when I was with Watchman is the Matsu, when Matsu borough had the ransomware attack. It took the entire borough down to paper and pen for several weeks. And I won't get into that, but what started making it more dastardly is when they started not only ransom, but they then tried to do exploitation, where they would hold your data hostage after they had ransomed you. So in that scenario, the actor comes into your organization, exfiltrates the data, and then ransoms you. And if you don't pay, then they extort you and release the data behind your back. So that's typically damaging, or terribly damaging, for any kind of the high stakes sectors like finance or healthcare, or finance and healthcare are the ones that come to mind. And they're a target, right? So healthcare is a target, part and parcel because our data is so clean, because we're collecting at the point of care just all kinds of data about a patient, and we're guarding and housing that, and then we're using it to do bills, to interact with insurance companies, and so we're a very meaty target, if you will, for the cyber threat actor group. And what that means is, and this slide actually shows it, is we're seeing a ramp, kind of goes like this, right? In terms of what we're seeing from the healthcare side of things. Cyber threat actor groups targeting healthcare, health systems, hospitals, etc. So the increases are startling in and of themselves. 256 increase over the last 5 years. Like I said, this is one that just keeps us awake at night. Most of ransomware nowadays is coming in through email, through phishing still. With the advent and the penetration of AI, we're starting to see the cyber threat actor groups utilize AI against us and write very, very convincing emails. Whereas before it might have been bad punctuation, bad English, grammar, etc. Now they're running them through AI and getting very pristine looking letters that look like they came from a human. Does it do that?
Wikipedia. Ooh, what the heck? Well, this is not good.
Pretty bad when it's doing that after talking about ransomware. I'm
I
like,
know. My heart's like, what?
Have we ever had, or like, we've never been ransomed?
That's not true.
I don't remember.
I don't think we've had a successful breach, though.
That's not true.
I've never heard of it. I've been here since 2015.
I have a report from 2016 that we were ransomed. We were able to recover because we had backups, but
Was it 16 or 17?
I believe the
'Cause I know specifically what happened
report
because
was
I was here.
16. I think it was 16.
I came back, it was August of 17. It was like the first day started as CFO that time. With,
Yeah.
someone clicked on something they should have, but IT was able to lock the computer down. They ransomed it, and we just put the computer back.
Yeah, I remember that. I guess I was thinking more of like a full ransom, like where we had to show.
So we had to like make that decision. No, there hasn't been anything like that.
Yeah, I do remember that.
My first day.
Oh,
Bill,
okay, I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. So, to add insult to injury on this ransomware and now, how they're holding you hostage with your own data. They have started moving into the same sort of as a service model as everyone else has as well. So now there are actual ransomware as a service, cyber threat actor groups. You can hop on to the dark net and you can find a group and they will, for a percentage of your take, run your entire ransomware attack for you. And you just sit back and wait and collect the dollars. As I mentioned, the new techniques, like I said, the being able to not only come into the environment and exfil the data, then ransom you, and then hold you hostage with it. This ransomware as a service is allowing them to attack way more targets and without a lot of, I would say, technical sophistication, right? So anyone can get on the dark net that can find one of these ransom groups can launch a very devastating attack with just a back and forth through that medium.
And they just do that pro bono, like, you don't have to pay them any,
Hey,
You don't need an RFP.
the groups, the cyber threat groups? Oh, no, they take a percentage.
but not upfront.
They do it from the inside, so they can entice somebody from the inside to do it. So that would be very hard to block. And then they can run that program and then they get a percentage of, then they split it, the profit.
Yeah, insider threat is insider threat is another area that we constantly keep some. We have tools inside of our environment that help see things like that. These are just some other headlines that have been out in the news because the trend that we're seeing now in and around ransomware, we're also seeing help desk being ransomed or being a vector for ransomware. So it's requiring us to think a little bit more broadly when we have a lot of external parties that are calling our help desk looking for assistance and things. So one of the things that we're working out right now with HR and credentialing is coming up with a identification factor or some kind of a verification factor so that when a doctor is calling in and saying, I need my password reset, we have something that we can then verify their identification with. And just not a couple months ago, we had an incident. A gentleman was calling, pretending to be a doctor, and our clinical staff were able to ask some questions that this gentleman had no knowledge of and couldn't, clearly prove that he was that individual. And what was interesting is they were really after the doctor first, so they could prescribe a narcotic. Okay, on to the next slide. So this next slide is really about some of the preventative and defensive things that we're trying to do here at Bartlett. Like I mentioned, the identity proofing. MFA, you'll hear about this is a project that I've been given some pretty clear direction from CEO to get this deployed. And we're working on a project plan right now to do that. Vulnerability assessments, we just finished an external penetration test with Rapid7, and we'll be having a debrief with them next week. And then we're going to be increasing our training and awareness. Some of the training that we do right now, the phishing exercises that we deploy out through our email, after so many failed, we actually are auto enrolling people into training, a more advanced training on phishing and how to spot, bad emails from good emails. And then the last thing there is about supply chain risk. And I've got a couple more slides that really kind of expose that. But the term in the industry is TPRM, it's third-party risk management. And it's all about understanding what our third parties are doing for their cybersecurity. Because just as we are attached to them, they are attached to us. And that makes them a potential vector for cybersecurity incident. At the national level, where in some of these slides, some of these thoughts, I should say, come from the meetings and things that I attend. I just recently was at the annual ISAC meeting, and in healthcare in general, it runs the gambit of you have top-notch organizations that are spending millions and millions of dollars on cybersecurity, and then all the way down to the community clinic that has like a couple PCs. So just that variance, it makes securing the sector extremely difficult and challenging. And antiquated hardware systems, all of that, that exists pervasive through no matter the top 500, 100, all the way down to the community clinic. The third one there, the cybersecurity insurance, I have a little bit, probably more than just the average experience with cybersecurity insurance, both from my time as CISO, but also as my time in consulting. And I can tell you that these premiums are just going to continue to keep rising. And I would say the difficulty in actually having the cyber insurance be a force for good is becoming more difficult. And what I mean by that is they're making it more and more arduous to be underwritten. You have to meet like additional layers of security, additional proofs and evidence and assessments before they will insure you. And then lo and behold, when that happens, you have one of those bad days and you start to bring them in. The help you get is not always the help that you think you need. And what I mean by that is when I was in my CISO role from 2013 to 17, there were many states that were impacted by big, large cyber incidents. They called in their cyber insurance companies and they ended in litigation because the cyber insurance companies wouldn't pay. So it's kind of one of those, it's an area that I think we need to pay attention to. And it's something that we're obviously working with CBJ because we're under a big umbrella right now. But there might be better ways in the future that we tackle that. Securing cyber talent that's not just in healthcare, that's all over. And then the reliance on medical device, the supply chain in medical devices is still worrying. So a lot of incidents, I won't bore you with some of these, are just some headlines scraped from one of the presentations that I saw when I was at the ISAC. And keep going. This one is more focused on our sector. Those of you probably recall the Change Health, United Health, Optum ransomware event that happened. It's so far still the largest payout for a ransomware in our history. So if you go up, yeah. So this letter that I have a screenshot of, this is the actual letter from OCR sent to Change Health executives. Not only does it incite a lot of fear and make the hairs on your neck stand up, because they are saying this is an unprecedented magnitude of the cyber attack. So when they use words like that, that makes you think this is something that's pervasive for the sector. And then the follow-up there, that OCR is initiating the investigation on the incident. Well, I've been in departments where OCR comes in and does investigations, so I can only imagine what this is going to be like for them. Overall, there was a group that was at first attributed. It was the Black Cat Alpha V, but they've come back and kind of denied that. Although the two groups that came in and investigated Mandiant and Palo Alto certainly say that it does look like them, and it does look like their techniques and practices, procedures that they use, TTPs. Overall, there were 6 terabytes of data stolen, and in that data, there was some medical records. And these next 3 slides, we can go kind of quickly through them. Why was the United Health and Change Healthcare and Optum ransomware so bad? So this is a question that a lot of people don't understand the answer to, because Change Health, United Health, Optum, they're all kind of amalgamation and aggregations of, there was a company, we've acquired a company, we've hired another company, and keep acquiring companies until we have this umbrella group of healthcare. And we have all these silos of different solutions, and we're trying to integrate them as we should. But we know that obviously there's going to be pockets, but in those pockets are different solutions that different customers are using. So it just makes this a more, it's just like, it maximizes the extent of the risk for anyone that might have been doing business with Change Health in the capacity of some of these services. So and I know it's kind of small, but if you can look at this, you'll see things like PACS services. So if you're using a PACS service and it was from United Healthcare and it was a hosted one, right? Like our PACS service is Change Health, but it's on premise. It doesn't interact with their cloud environment, right? The only thing that we had to do was cut off access for their tech support to come in that we have in case we have problems where they do remote support. So it didn't really impact us, but other organizations that might have been using that as their PACS in the cloud, they were now locked out. And who knows if that data was actually was exfiltrated in that 6 terabytes or not. But if you go through these slides, there's like 3 of them. These are all the service lines, and behind these service lines are who knows how many customers, right, across the United States that were impacted when the Change Health hack occurred. So thinking about, like, why was this so bad? It was so bad because all of the services were impacted. They took everything down. There were hospitals and health systems that were losing, I think some of the articles were in the like hundreds of millions of dollars a day because they weren't able to bill. There was emergency loan programs stood up so that health systems and hospitals could stay in business.
Make payroll.
Exactly. Yes, it was a disaster. So go to the next slide. Right, if you can. So I'm just going to drop back for 1 second and talk about this presidential policy directive that established the critical infrastructure sectors. Out of the September 11th attack, when they did that commission report, one of the things, well, actually, there are several things that came out of that, but one of the ones that resonated everywhere was that organizations were not speaking to one another. They weren't sharing intelligence. They weren't sharing what they knew. And the PPD established these, what they call critical infrastructure sectors. Healthcare is one of them. Energy is another one. Transportation, energy, etc. Finance. They all have these sectors. We are all in a sector, and they stood up this architecture so that we could securely share information with ourselves, if that makes sense, about attacks or about threats that are coming into our sector. So we are part of what's called the HISAC, which is the Health ISAC. We're also part of the MS ISAC, which is the multi-state ISAC, because we're government. So those two ISACs feed us information about threats, about vulnerabilities, and things that we need to be taking care of in our own organization. But that term that I highlighted, the unprecedented magnitude, I'm sure you remember the Colonial Pipeline attack on the energy. So shut down the Eastern Seaboard's major pipeline, gas shortages back to the 1970s. So that was the energy unprecedented attack, right? They're largely referring to the Change Health / United Health as the healthcare's version of the Colonial Pipeline. And that remains, there's 14 other sectors out there that are obviously at risk, right, for something large. Now, this slide is, when you go to these meetings, you're under what's called Charter House rules, where I can't attribute what they tell us, but I can share it with a group like this. So there was one presentation that I attended where they were talking about nation state actors. So remember in the beginning when I was talking about ransomware, and largely that's financially motivated cyber threat actors. On the flip side of that, we have what's called nation state actors. So these are hacking groups that are either responsive or that are either supported by, or they are direct connected to either quasi-military or military under a foreign, usually an unfriendly foreign government. And the three that were highlighted in that report were Russia, Iran, and China, or we call it PRC. So what they're highlighting here is recent attacks from May of last year through April of this year. And you can see there's a trend, right? We're seeing a lot of water in there. And obviously that water, wastewater, that's one of those critical infrastructure sectors that might be the next Change Health artifact. The interesting thing about that I can share about some of the water was that in the attack that happened in Pennsylvania, they had identified some Iranian symbologies, and they were basically taking over the human interface at wastewater plant and moving the mouse and sending messages to the operators. It was very scary stuff. Okay, so how do we then take all of that bad stuff and start trying to weigh it out with our approach to laying out a cybersecurity program and risk management for what we're going to invest in and how we're going to architect ourselves. So knowing that there's no perfect protection, this slide, if I was in PowerPoint, it actually builds on itself and it's got some animation, so it's a little bit more engaging. But what you're seeing here is on the left-hand side, those mom and pops, those small clinics, those small organizations, they largely accept that risk because they're not complex, right? And as you move over to the right, you get that lower risk, but you also have the higher cost. So I can guarantee you that United Health and Change Health, Optum, we're spending probably factors of double-digit factors on cybersecurity than we do, right? It's really about understanding what your threat is and how to address it. And one of the things that I've always carried forward is it's our humans. It's the people on this side of the keyboard. Those are the ones that we need to invest in. Those are the ones that we need to train. Those are the ones that need to be aware of these threats that are out there. Yeah. This is just a slide that sort of overlays what I was trying to portray in that risk management is as our program matures from left to right, our risk position obviously crosses somewhere and then precipitously moves down to where it is less and less over time. And this is basically the CMM model, right? The continuous maturity model, 1 through 5. 3 is always kind of the sweet spot. That's where you have the most, I would say, the most benefit with the least investment. But as you invest, there's a fulcrum where you start to plateau and it doesn't really matter how much you invest, you're not really going to make your risk go down any further. So under this next section, what I wanted to do was share kind of what's happening on the regulatory realm. This is from Health and Human Services and CMS. They have released what's called the Cybersecurity Performance Goals for healthcare. And this just happened in January of this year. The HHS was one of the 2 agencies that came out in support of CISAs. That's the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency under Homeland Security. And what they're doing is they're putting out some very prescriptive guidance and goals for organizations to hit. Well, HHS jumped on that and went straight out with if you can go to the next slide, with what are these essential and enhanced goals for cybersecurity. And as Gail and I were talking earlier last week, what we often see with the federal government is they share these voluntary goals or these aspirational goals and things to achieve. And then sometime in the future, they become mandatory and regulatory. So I am, with that in mind, what I'm trying to do with the cybersecurity program here is align to these goals. And that's easy to do because we have the cybersecurity framework. Next slide. Yeah, you can actually even go to the next one. So the cybersecurity framework breaks down cybersecurity among these 6 functions. There's a governance function, there's identity, protect, detect, and respond and recover. under each of those, there are prescribed things that we should be doing. And those map to those 853 security controls, as well as to like HIPAA, any of those standards that we should be doing. Go to the next slide. Okay, you can pause here. So what I wanted to share is, if you take one of these, and click one of these, the one slide, and I didn't want to put this out into the public because this is I wouldn't want this information getting out.
This is a public meeting.
Yeah.
We can talk about it, but I just don't want these documents to get out. If that's okay.
Or they have to be.
If anybody asks now for one of these documents, we have to.
Provide someone requests them, they can ask for this.
Yeah.
Hand them back.
It's right in the map.
In the future, we should talk about whether these kind of things should be talked about in the executive session.
Yes, I agree with that. And
Should we hand them back or talk about
I would appreciate to have them back. I guess.
I didn't read it.
I didn't.
Well, that's.
Okay. So I knew you were going to do that.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Through the chair,
Yes.
you could give a general overview of the assessment on our program maturity on these papers,
Okay.
but not give the specific facts
Okay.
that you wanted to provide.
Okay.
So you can give what the report found.
I can do that. So in one of the handouts, there's a requirement under HIPAA that we do a security risk assessment each year, right? And last year we met that requirement by participating in the National Cybersecurity Review. It's NCSR. It's a self-assessment that is maintained out of the MS-ISAC and the Center for Internet Security, which is a nonprofit that does a lot of the work for the MS-ISAC. They've established some years ago that if you complete that, you are meeting that requirement. So what I can share out of that is there were findings, and the principle that we're taking to heart is strengthening our incident response. There's a policy that is requiring a little bit more work and I think procedural language for how we respond to a cyber incident that is not in that document today. So we have an opportunity to improve a policy. And then the other thing that's worth sharing is that they rate respondents on a scale of 1 to 7. 5 is what they consider to be the minimal, or so you could think of that as the 3 in the middle of that one slide. And there's only the only category that we were below, we were deficient from that goal is the incident response that I mentioned before. So that's why we're targeting that as an area for not only reflection, but also improvement.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Is there anybody online? I can't really tell. Oh, okay, so it's just the people. Okay, well then should we move on? Gail, you've got 3 things.
Yes. All right. So one of the things that we haven't officially done as a compliance committee is look to add our policies as an organization. So as Hal and I started reviewing the policies, I noticed a lot of them were initially adopted from one of our policy assessments companies that came in, and they were kind of standardized policies, cookie cutter policies that we adopted and had been in place for a very long time, like our education policy. So we were starting to work on them. And then as I realized it was a pretty large undertaking, I decided to look at our policies as a large group to identify what we have in place throughout our organization and look for policies that we may be missing. So what you have here is just our program management matrix. So looking at, do we have a compliance program overview, code of conduct, and basic policies in place? And what the purpose was, owner, how the vetting is done, approvals, review date. So this is what I'm working off of to ensure that we actually have the basic standards of what a compliance program should have on. I have about 7 or 8 policies that I still have not located, that I'm reaching out to different people to find that we should really have some stronger policies in place. A lot of them are kind of related to some of our finance side that I actually sent some emails over to Tammy and that on some of our processes that I know we have some procedures in place, but do we have them documented anywhere? So those are some things that are coming in that I noticed some gaps. The other thing I noticed is I couldn't identify actually things that had board level, should have gone up through a board level that I did not ever see them eyes on in front of this committee or the full board. So that's on this document, that there are some things that should be vetted through the board. So that's one thing I'm going to be working on, Hal, with, because I appreciate his eagle eye to review documents ahead of time so we can make sure they're nice and clean before you have. But there are a lot of things that should be looked at and vetted by the board for the compliance program through the hospital. So the first one that's pretty close that I'm going to bring next month is our education training policy. I have a code of conduct that is actually over with HR right now. We're working on updating our code of conduct. Right now, our physician recruitment policy and fair market valuation policy are being worked on right now. And a few others that are in the process. So next month, there will probably about 7 or 8 policies that will be coming in. And hopefully within the next couple of meetings, we'll have this, all the ones that should be vetted at a board level pulled through so we can have these all updated. And then on an annual basis, we'll have them updated and then reviewed to you. The reason I've been looking at and doing this is I'm actually looking at our compliance plan and looking at, all of the, the actual different parts of a compliance program and going through them and reviewing them internally. Because I've been working with Ian on coming up with having an outside review of our compliance program at Bartlett. So I'm trying to do the internal work and trying to get everything as clean as possible before we hire an outside consultant, because I don't want them to pick off the easy things. I want them to come in and actually really dive into looking at things that we really want more them to look at.
When do you think that might be completed?
I am still looking at particular companies to try to find the right company
Do you have any sense
for
of
it.
how long once one's selected?
I'm hoping for this fall, early fall. I'm still looking at the right cost of it and what's in my budget, and different companies have different focuses, like the one that I was looking at was very focused on HIPAA related things and has kind of a different mindset right now of where he might be going. So I'm still pulling out.
But if I'm taking in what you're saying, the guess is it's gonna take a couple, once they get hired, it'll take them a couple of months,
Yeah,
not 6 months.
not 6 months. I would like something done this fall.
Thank you.
So any questions on this?
No, but I have a comment, Mr. Chair.
Oh, please.
I just am very thankful that we have this. This is something I think that we've talked about as a board, what the compliance program should look like and actually does look like here. So thank you for pulling this together. This is awesome.
So just to be a little bit redundant, we're gonna ask for, even though we, in principle, meet quarterly, we went along, had a long gap. Our first meeting to this being our second, we're gonna ask for another meeting next month. And we're gonna start right in with the compliance program, fix up policies, and that's what Brett went then to do. Please.
And to attach names, I know Chris now has IT, and who's physician services director?
To the chair, that would be Sarah Dodd.
Okay. Okay, that I know. And then compliance? That's-
I'm the compliance officer, and then Nathan Overson is the compliance coordinator.
Okay.
And then the HIPAA, so for HIPAA security, that would be Chris Letterman is HIPAA security, and then for HIPAA privacy, it's Rachel Stark. She is our HIM director. So those two are oversee any HIPAA issues, whether it's either privacy or security. So those are the two officers. So when you see them on the list, when I talked about it, those are the two people that I vet things through. Best practice on policy management is not to write a policy and approve it. You always want it vetted through other sources. And that's one thing that I'm trying to instill in every policy that goes through Bartlett, is not one person writing it and approving it in our organization.
Ultimately, we have to approve it though, I think, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
We would approve it and then we.
Yes.
Report it to the board.
Yes.
Full board.
yes. But even the policies that aren't board level, any policy at Bartlett, no one should be writing a policy and approving it. There should always be a second set of eyes on it. It's just best practice. The next, I wanted to give an update. I think the next point, if it's okay, Pat,
Oh, please.
to go on, is we have started a physician contract committee. And what I wanted to do is just give you a little update on what our purpose is, what we are starting to do, who is on the members on it. And with that, you are, as the compliance committee, you're going to start seeing updates quarterly coming through on this committee. So basically the purpose of that committee is to provide a systematic review and oversight for the process of evaluation. So looking at what our assessment of our need coming from recruitment, the whole process of when a need is identified, we have a process of that being approved through either the recruitment committee, the CEO, and then all the way through contracting and getting a contract approved, fair market value, that process, onboarding, and then the continuation of once the physician is onboarded, then the renewals of contracts. So this is a committee that is made up of myself, the contracts manager, which is Beth Mao, Sarah Dodd, our physician services manager, our HR director, Nate Rumsey, who's our executive director of business development. I don't really know his title. I kind of made it up, so I'm not sure his official title. We have our controller on it, and Joe is ad hoc if controller is missing. Once we get our director of med staff services, once we get them on board, they would also be part of that committee. And what we're doing is we're really looking at how we are doing our physician contracting, recruiting, onboarding, making sure our process is solid, reviewing it. And then once we have that process solid, any contracts, best practice in board compliance is that then there's a review of that process and a report given to the board that what contracts were in place, that the due diligence was done, where they fall, not the details of contracts, but the approvals of what was the due diligence done by the organization and the committee, fair market value, anything on the contract, so that way you have ultimately oversight of it. So that's pretty much industry standard, that there should be some reporting up because you should have some oversight and due diligence on it. So this is one thing I've been working with Ian on, coming up to a process, and he said, all of his other hospitals, that has come through the compliance committee, and it's usually a report out at the beginning of the compliance meeting. So
if I'm going along, this committee should be paying particular attention to the fair market value issue. That should take precedence.
Right.
In this committee.
Yeah. So we're going to be working on a report that where you see what it is and where it falls. So we haven't worked out exactly what that report's going to look like. So like if we've just reviewed our group of hospitalists, where is a group where they fall out, if there's any outliers or why, because there are sometimes, we might be pulling in one specialist who is a hard to recruit specialist that we might have to pull them in at, a 95% of fair market value because, we haven't, that's what we have to do as an organization to recruit in. But there has to be justification and legal review and the board needs to understand that, and we have, have an approval on that. But we should have all of our data, and you should be able to look at where we're falling. And what we're doing is we're setting bumpers for where our normal best practices are. So that way, if we're falling out of those bumpers, then you're going to be able to see that. And we're going to come up with some type of document that you're going to be easily able to visualize that. We don't do enough contracts that it's going to be overwhelming and arduous to review and see.
We've been told, this committee's been told for a long time now that this fair market value is really important. And I've spent a lot of time on my own trying to figure out how do you assess it. It's not a formula or equation. It's so mysterious. So we're going to probably need some practice in figuring out what do we look at.
There's resources that we use.
Yeah.
It's not something that you just magically come up with.
Right.
And that's something that we have legal review on our contracts, and Serodontis actually uses resources, and we don't jump resources. We have defined resources as an organization that we use when we're coming up with what we are looking at for fair market value. It's just like if we were going to do for us as employees, if we want to come up with what our industry standard is to pay employees, we're not going to say when we're going to use this one because it's favorable to Bartlett, and then oh, wait a second, now we're going to jump to using this resource or that resource. We come up with which resource we're going to use and look at it.
I'm just saying this committee is we're going to have to work on developing our eyes to what to look for. And mainly it's going to be, we're going to be relying on work of other people. We're not going to be doing our own legal analysis and our own financial analysis.
Right. And that's why in the beginning, what we're doing is we're looking at our policy, our standards, and our process. Because that's key, is once you start with that and then you work to that. So you say your bumpers, you say your expectations. The one thing that Serodontis is actually working on a process is what do we negotiate and what we don't. So, and having a new process in place that we're really excited to start working on once we get the committee established. Because there are some things that, are in a package, that we have that are pretty standard. And then there's other things that are negotiable. So having a more standard. So you'll be hearing more about that, and that's going to probably be one of the standing committee items coming forward in the future.
Great. Any questions?
Just a comment, operating in this milieu with an organization, 10 times gross revenues. It does not have numbers. So it'll be interesting for us.
It will be. Very much so.
We had 3 times more employees or something like that. I can't remember. Our gross revenues are substantial.
Okay. Thanks, Anita. Keep me moving. All right.
Anytime.
The compliance work plan updated for you to know, probably the last, the key is, all right, my glasses, I'm getting old. I think just up in progress, looking at it. I don't think there was any major updates on it, just some changes on dates and times on this. On the last page, on the implementation and improvement initiatives, just the only other 2 things I added in was just creating a compliance process for evaluating contracts. We added that in, and the compliance audit review and the physician contract committee. So just a couple new things that we're working on, initiatives in there on that.
Can I ask you a question? In progress, is that a discrete project, or are there some that are continuous? Does in progress mean it started and will be finished soon, or it's a continuous process?
Some of them are still in it, are in progress. The new services committee is hopefully going to be reestablished and be done. The process for evaluating contracts hopefully will be done within a couple months. The contracts committee is hopefully going to be up and totally established within a few months, and a process be done on that. And the No Surprise Act is still in the works. We haven't finished that one yet. So don't have complete dates. I can get estimated complete dates for the next committee.
So I guess my question was, wasn't it, questioning how many were in progress. Is there anything in our work plan that we just do continually, and you report out if there's anything outside, or are all of these discrete projects that will have a completion, which you reported on that piece of it, but
there are things that we always do, like audits we're always doing. There's a lot of things that we are doing, and then we have a last perform date. And then there are some things that are completed on it, but this is kind of based on our annual work plan, and we are constantly doing this. I'd like to change this. I would like to change the way this is done, but right now it's what I inherited. So I'm living with what I inherited right now. So, yes.
No surprise billing. That was January 22, wasn't it?
I know.
That's a little while ago.
No.
We have a process, we just need to optimize it.
Yes.
By law, we have to.
We have
Okay, so we're legal.
we're legal.
We're
Okay.
legal.
Just optimize it.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, can I have a quick follow-up? on that, sorry.
I'm so happy you're back on the committee.
Maybe, maybe not. There was a tinge of sarcasm.
No, I am. I truly am, actually. Experience.
So if you're contemplating
Mhm. Yeah.
reworking, it would be helpful to know if we have a continuous process. That is a relief to me
Yes.
as a member of this committee and as a board member, that these are the things are in progress all the time. Others that are discrete projects that rightfully so will come to closure. So that's just if we can get there.
Yes. Through the chair, I would like something that would trigger you to ask me questions. That's things that are either yellow or red that you can like call it out to me on and say, yeah, why are we either going down or up on this, or why is, where are the concerns? I don't feel like this gives you that identifier that we have concerns. So that's what I feel is lacking, and I feel we need to give you more awareness of where the concerns are.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. We have I don't know if we have one more matter, don't we?
No.
Yeah, the last one is just your informational report, and that is just where we are and what we're doing.
The compliance metrics.
Yep, that's our compliance metrics, and that's just what we are tracking and measuring each month.
So
So
then I'll just ask the question, is there anything that is in the yellow or red?
nothing.
Okay, thank you. Well, then I think the very last thing is we need to pick the time for a meeting next month. Any suggestions? August. We have.
I'm mostly here.
Deer hunting on August 1st, or going to the Haynes Fair. You might want to propose a date. Gail, do you want to propose a date?
Well, I know the finance committee is on the 16th, so I don't know if you want to meet on the day before. I know Dr. Lester does surgeries on Thursdays. So
15 is light. Afternoon, if we wanted to. 15 or 22.
I mean, either of those days are fine for me. I don't know if you want to have board meetings back to back.
I had no preference. Deb, do you have a preference?
No, not really. I mean, the first and third Fridays of next month are in general meeting days that planning and finance regularly go over their time.
Are we moving planning to the 7th? There was discussion that you might be out of town, and
Oh, yeah.
We haven't yet, but
I think the thing that was going to put me out of town is.
it's on the calendar for the 2nd. On my calendar for the
The
2nd,
planning?
for August. Yeah.
yeah, well, I hadn't sent a revised one because
Right.
it hadn't been locked in. We were,
Should we say the 15th? Does that work for you?
The 15th works for me. The 2nd doesn't work. Yeah, I remember talking about that.
No,
When we
about
were doing the
planning.
calendar at board, yeah, because I've got all those town select meetings to do before
Yeah,
school.
exactly.
I know,
So-
I remember that.
So since finance has moved, we can move planning to the, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we can move planning to the night.
So the 15th at 2.
We probably need to,
I can email the committee.
Yeah.
Well, if we all agree on this, we'll still have to propose it to. We've got another opportunity to make a change.
Is 2:30, does that work for your surgery schedule, or?
And I think that's what Kenny.
All right. It helps Anita to have it before the board meeting because she doesn't have to schedule up during the board meeting at night.
Well, so we should write this in ink, but we could change it.
Yes.
2:30 on 15. We still don't have a plan yet. Did you?
I'll email the committee members, see if they want to move it to the night.
Okay. Thanks for.
For your time today, Chris.
Sure.
It's really good.
Any member comments or comments from staff?
I just want to thank Chris Letterman for giving his time and that presentation.
Yes, thank you.
Well,
It was very thorough, thank you.
It's easy when you know more than anybody in the room.
I mean, that was
No,
a great presentation.
This chapter-
You know a lot more than everybody.
I'll add to that it provides a level of comfort for those of us who don't know as much as you do.
Okay, then I guess we're adjourned.
Okay.
All right. I didn't know you were already on that email.
well, I'm glad to know you